All right, folks, so today I've got a fun little video in store. So today I'm going to be doing a real life comparison of the COROS VERTIX 2 versus the new Garmin Enduro 2. And I'll let you know why I have it covered up here in just one second. But the VERTIX 2 and the Enduro 2, they actually share a lot of similarities. They're both super premium outdoor focused sports watches. They both have sapphire lenses, they both have touchscreens, they both have maps, and both of them also do have a dual band satellite systems mode for increased GPS accuracy. And the GPS accuracy is primarily what I'm going to be testing out here today, but I also wanted to go over the differences in terms of how you use the device. So both of them do have touch screens and both of them do have the maps, but there definitely is a difference in terms of how you use them when you load in routes. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get rolling, and we'll chat along the way. Now, although the Enduro 2 does come with the new Sat IQ mode where it's able to automatically select between different satellite modes depending on the quality of the signal, I'm actually going to be locking it into the dual frequency mode just to keep things equal in terms of accuracy between the VERTIX 2 and the Enduro 2. And then the reason I'm covering the Enduro 2 is that, again, I want to kind of keep things equal as possible in terms of battery life. So this way the Enduro 2 isn't getting solar charging. And then you also may have noticed the other watches that I have here too. So I also have the regular Fenix 7 Solar without the Sapphire. So this does not have the dual band satellite systems mode. And then I also have an Epix over here, and I'll be using the Sat IQ mode on that one. Again, just kind of as a comparison, just to kind of see how accurate each one is. And although accuracy is a big part of this video, I also want to focus on the navigation as well as the usability. So I will be using routes on both devices, and getting the routes onto the devices is actually very easy at this point. So all you have to do is basically just load a route into Strava and then make sure you favorite it. And then if you have your Strava account hooked up to your COROS account or your Garmin Connect account, the route should just automatically show up in your courses. And then from there, it's a pretty simple procedure of just transferring that to your watch. All right, so let's just go and take a look at the actual maps first. So this is the VERTIX 2. So the white lines that you see, those are going to be trails. And then the pink line, that's going to be the route that I loaded in. And then you'll see the little chevron showing the direction of travel. And then the blue line is the route that I've taken. Now, if you watch my Fenix 6 versus VERTIX 2 video that I did last year over in Chamonix, one of my complaints was that the maps, well, they didn't have a whole lot of contrast. So it's kind of hard to tell the trails from the background, but they've increased the contrast on that quite a bit. So really stoked to see that. And then on the other hand, quite literally, is the Enduro 2. So there's the route that's going to be that kind of darker black line, and it also does have the chevron showing the direction of travel. And then what's kind of funny is that on the right-hand side, you'll notice that the chevrons are going in both directions because I'm supposed to be going both up as well as down that trail. But the one big difference with the Enduro 2 is that you'll also notice that there's trail names as well as road names on there. So with the VERTIX 2, they chose not to include that information. I think what they said was that it's kind of in an effort to simplify the experience, but I don't know, with navigation I really like to actually have the trail names. And then in terms of the actual usability of the maps, both of them do have touchscreens, which makes it super nice to kind of pan around a little bit. You notice that it's just a little bit of a lag in terms of redrawing the page. It's not that bad though. And then to zoom in and out, you also do have the crown dial, which I absolutely love that. So that makes it just super easy to zoom in and out. And then with the Enduro 2, same deal where you have the touchscreen, so kind of use that to kind of pan around the map. You notice that it does have a little bit of a delay as well, just like the VERTIX 2, probably a little bit faster to redraw than the VERTIX 2 though, but then you can also double tap to zoom if you'd like to. But it also has these additional buttons on the side where you can actually use the buttons to do panning, zooming as well, in addition to the touchscreen. So it's kind of just like an additional interface. So although you can double tap to zoom on the Enduro 2, the VERTIX 2 does have the crown dial, which I really do like for zooming in and out. So this is kind of an interesting point in the trail I wanted to point out. So basically you see I have 4 different options to choose from other than the direction that I just came. So with the VERTIX 2 right here, well, although I have the course loaded up, so it does show me the direction of travel, since it doesn't have the actual trail names, if I didn't have a course loaded, it could be a little bit challenging to figure out which trail to take. So that's what's nice, is that, you know, this trail at least has some markers on it. And then with the Enduro 2, it does have the actual trail name. So it's just a little bit easier to navigate because of that. So this is going to be a really good spot to test out the dual band accuracy on both devices, because this is where it can really come in handy when there's a lot of overhead tree cover, but also a lot of like kind of tall objects beside the trail or your route, like a tall building, where the satellite systems can kind of bounce. So these switchbacks should be interesting, because what tends to happen with GPS as you're making tight turns at higher speeds, like going downhill like I am right now, what can happen is that the GPS tracks can kind of like overshoot the corner just a little bit and then get back on the trail. So again, it's going to be really interesting to see the comparison of all the devices and how well they did with these turns. And I'll tell you what, this is what trail running is all about right here. Pretty stellar. Another feature that the Enduro 2 has is a new feature called Next Fork. So basically it gives you information on the next fork in the trail. So right here, it basically shows the trail name, if it actually has the trail name information, as well as the distance to that trail. Another feature that the Enduro 2 has, and this is similar to a lot of higher end Garmin devices, is a feature called Climb Pro. So this is when you load in a route, it'll actually break out the climb. So right here, it shows you that I'm on my 5th climb on this route, thank goodness, and have 102 feet left of climbing, 0.12 miles. And yeah, it's gonna be a steep 0.12 miles, but this is a really handy feature to have. The Vertix 2, it doesn't have Climb Pro, but when you do load in a route, it does show a nice elevation profile as well as where you're at right there. So basically we can see that I'm nearly the end of the last climb. So that's another feature that the Enduro 2 has. So that is, apologize for the car that's coming up here in a second, but that's going to be a turn alert or turn notification. So again, when you load in a route, it'll basically just kind of give you an alert about, let's see here, maybe like 40 feet before a turn. Now, this really is handy when it comes to trail junctures, but it also will alert you just with tight turns in the trail. So that can be, I don't know, kind of a good thing or a bad thing, but if you're on like a lot of really tight switchbacks, like kind of all in succession, it can kind of beep at you a lot. All right, so all said and done, around 7.5-ish miles, depending on which device was recording. But now I'm just gonna go ahead and get home, shower it up, gonna look over some data, and we'll wrap things up back at the studio. All right, so this is a bonus round test. So I know we already did the trail run, and that was a good test for stuff like a lot of overhead tree cover, as well as a lot of tight switchbacks, but let's do a completely different type of test today. So as you can tell from these palm trees behind me, I'm not in Colorado anymore. I'm actually in Long Beach. So today we've got a completely different type of test around some really tall buildings. We're gonna go along the beach. It's just gonna be a fun little test to test the accuracy in a different type of environment. But this time around, I'm gonna actually have the Enduro 2 in the Sat IQ or auto select mode, and going in and out of these buildings as well as along the beach, I think that's gonna be a good opportunity to see how well it handles switching between the satellite modes. And then for battery life, I'm starting out with both of them about 91%. I'll be using a wrist-based heart rate with no other sensors paired. And this time I won't be using routing, and I won't be having it on the map page. So again, it's gonna be a kind of a good comparison. And funny enough, the sun literally just came out behind the clouds, so let's go for a run.
So take me on a trip, now, trip, or flick that switch, kill the light
All right, run is done, and as you can tell, I'm not used to this humidity, but this time around, all the watches lined up a lot closer in terms of total distance, basically a little bit over 8 miles, but it is really going to be interesting to see how all the watches did in terms of GPS accuracy around all these tall buildings. So I guess let's go ahead and get cleaned up and check out the rest of this data. So like I was mentioning just a second ago, there's an interesting difference between all the devices in regards to total distance on this trail run. Not like miles off or anything like that, but a noticeable difference where the Enduro 2 and the 955 had the most, then the Epix 2, the Fenix 7X, and then the Vertix 2. Now, which one is more accurate? Well, the GPS tracks tell a little bit more of that story. So the orange line that you see is the Enduro 2, the purple line is the COROS VERTIX 2, the green line is the Forerunner 955 Solar, and all those devices are in their highest accuracy dual band mode. And then the yellow line is the Epix 2 in the Sat IQ or Auto Select mode, and then the blue line is the Fenix 7X Solar with a non-dual band all satellite systems mode. So from a high level, you can see that there really aren't any huge deviations or misses by any of them, but as we zoom in, that's where we can see a bit more. So right here in this section on some tight turns as I was going up, good to go on all the devices, but right here, the Enduro 2 swept just a little bit wide, but nothing crazy by any means. However, on this straight section, which actually wasn't under much tree cover, the Vertix 2 veered off the path a good bit and took a little bit for it to lock back onto the trail. And then after that, we've got pretty good tracks by all of them for a while, but then up here on these turns, the Fenix 7X that wasn't using a dual band mode took that corner a little wide and then cut in on this corner and then went a little wide over here. Right here though, we see the Vertix 2 get off trail a little bit, kind of like the Fenix 7X, and then the Forerunner 955 and the Epix in the Sat IQ mode were probably the strongest in terms of accuracy, at least on this section. And on this corner down here, the Vertix 2 cut in a bit, and then over here we can see that the Fenix 7X cut in, and this is basically about the trend I saw over the course of the entire run, is that the Vertix 2 in its dual band mode was about comparable to the Fenix 7X in a non-dual band mode. So like here, these are those switchbacks that I was referring to earlier in the video, and we see that the 7X and the Vertix 2 struggle a little bit more at the higher speeds in regards to the detail versus the other devices. Nothing like way off or anything like that, but just not quite as crispy as the others. But now let's check out that run in the city, and as I was alluding to earlier, much closer in terms of the total distances between the devices versus the trail run, but let's also take a look at the tracks. So again, the orange line is the Enduro 2, the purple line is the Vertix 2, the green line is the Forerunner 955 Solar, and the blue line is another watch that doesn't have a dual band satellite systems mode. So just starting out, things were looking solid out of all of them. Good stuff, and as I went under this road right here, all of them were fine in regards to reacquiring a satellite signal. But on this curve down here, the Vertix 2 cut in a bit, and other than some palm trees, there really wasn't a whole lot going on that could impede the satellite signals. And then on this out and back section right here, I'd say very good out of all of them. Nothing too much to complain about. And then right here on this tight corner as I turn back to my hotel, maybe a slight difference, but I'd say all of them did just fine. But as we get back into the downtown area, this is where things get a bit more interesting. So the watch without dual band started to go into the street a little bit here. Nothing too bad, but just a bit off. Overall though, all the devices did pretty well in this straight section. But as we start to run beside the really tall buildings, the Vertix 2 went into the street a little bit right here. The Forerunner 955 swept this corner a little bit wide. The Vertix 2 and the watch without dual band cut in a little bit right here. But right here though, the Vertix 2 decided to try to go into the bank for some reason. Now one very interesting section is right here. So this is going in and out of those buildings that we saw earlier in the clip around the Long Beach sign. So the Forerunner 955 Solar in its locked off dual band mode was easily the strongest here, where the others wanted to cut in. But then over here though, we see the Vertix 2 cut into the buildings again. So the takeaway in terms of accuracy is that it seems that the dual band mode on the Forerunner 955 as well as the Enduro 2, those were producing the most accurate tracks. The Vertix 2, well, it definitely struggled on that trail run, and it certainly was reflected in the total distance coming up short. However, in the city, the Vertix 2 did do a lot better, but there were a few spots where it went into a building here or there. But overall, it did do a lot better in that environment. Overall, I would say that the accuracy of the Vertix 2 in its dual band mode is probably equivalent to something like the Fenix 7X in a non-dual band mode. And then in regards to Sat IQ, I think it produced some pretty respectable results out of both the Epix 2 as well as the Enduro 2. We did see a few spots on both runs where there were a few misses, but I think it's probably worth the battery savings with not that much loss in accuracy. And that gets us to battery life, and this is rather fascinating. So on that trail run, which is about 2.5 hours, I started out with 99% on both watches, and at the end of the run, I had 95% remaining on the Vertix 2 and 94% remaining on the Enduro 2. So just doing the simple math, that means that the Vertix 2 was using about 1.6% of the battery per hour, which translates into like 62.5 hours of run time. And then the Enduro 2 was using about 2% of the battery per hour, which translates into about 50 hours of run time. So that is super impressive that the Vertix 2 far exceeded COROS's claim of just 50 hours in a dual band mode. However, the Enduro 2, well, that came up short of Garmin's claim of 68 hours, at least when it was in a locked off dual band mode. However, it did get better accuracy. But for the run of the
city, I started with 91% on both watches, and at the end of the run, I had 88% left on the Vertix 2 and 89% on the Enduro 2, but I did have the Enduro 2 in its Sat IQ mode, so that definitely makes a difference in terms of battery life. But going back to that trail run and why the Enduro 2 may have come up short in terms of the battery life claim, well, if we remember back to the map page where the Enduro 2 was redrawing the map a lot faster than the Vertix 2, one of my theories is that it's just using a lot more processing power while on that page. So there can be other factors like navigation and routing that can have an effect on battery life. Okay, so to wrap things up, what does this all mean and which one is actually better? Well, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. So for the core hardware, they actually share a lot of similarities. Both are premium outdoor focused GPS sports watches. Both have super durable builds, including sapphire lenses and titanium hardware. Both have maps, both have touchscreens, and in the whole scheme of things, both of these have great battery life. So then why does the Enduro 2 cost $1,100 and the Vertix 2 costs $700? Well, the biggest differences in the hardware front is that the Enduro 2 has solar charging, which can extend the battery life, and then it also has a flashlight. And trust me folks, the flashlight, it's not gimmicky. I use this thing constantly. But the Vertix 2 does have the upper hand in terms of battery life, where we're not talking about solar charging at all, and this is both with standby battery life as a smartwatch as well as recording outdoor activities. However, in terms of accuracy, that goes to the Enduro 2. And then in terms of usability for navigation, well, you can probably get by with either of these, but the Enduro 2 does offer more, like labels on maps. There's also the turn alerts or turn notifications, and then also the ability to route using points of interest using a huge database that they have on the watch itself. And then the other differences are with the software, where the Enduro 2 offers stuff like their training readiness feature, a bit more on the training status side of things in regards to training feedback, and more smartwatch features like music storage and playback from services like Spotify. COROS is definitely catching up though, where they have a good amount of feedback features for runners like their running performance index, and they also track training load, but it's just not quite to the level of what Garmin has, at least at this moment. Anyhow, those are just my thoughts on the COROS VERTIX 2 and the Garmin Enduro 2, but I also want to hear about what you think about these devices, so definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And on your way down there, if you found this video entertaining or useful or something like that, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more sports tech videos that are right around the corner. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.